Everyone loves football.
It's a Zach Gelb Show. Football Friday on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. 5:16 is the time from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. Wouldn't be a Friday without talking to Matt Lombardo, Eagles insider for NJ.com, in his weekly spot. And we're doing this one coming off a big Eagles victory last night. Eagles get the victory up against the Carolina Panthers by a final of 28-23. And who would have thought going into this year that the Philadelphia Eagles, through 6 games, the first 6 games of the season, would be sitting high and pretty in a beautiful sight at 5-1. Matt Lombardo, my friend, probably on like 3 hours of sleep after doing a nice, diligent job last night covering the game. How are you, my friend?
Zach, I'm doing great. And I'll say this right out of the chute. You won your headline? Last night was a transcendent win for this Eagles team, a transcendent win for Carson Wentz. That's the takeaway. And you're sitting here at 5-1. You're the only team in the NFC to have 5 wins so far, second best record in the NFL behind the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't think it's unrealistic to think that this team should now expect to be not only a threat to make the playoffs, but a threat to go to the NFC Championship game and maybe a Super Bowl because of the way they won that game last night and because of the way that this quarterback is playing, with still plenty more room to grow.
If they keep on doing that, the sky's the limit. I know the coach said it last week. Just the physicality, though, of this team, specifically with this front seven right now. Fletcher Cox comes back, has an enormous game last night. Nigel Bradham was everywhere. Michael Kendricks was everywhere. Just how about how physical this team is right now on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, that second quarter, Zach, that second quarter from Fletcher Cox was why you paid that man $120 million. His first game back from that calf injury, he gets the sack on Cam Newton, gets a pass breakup, forcing his man into the backfield. He was a dominant presence on the inside, and a lot of that also helped set up later in the game because of the attention the Panthers had to show Fletcher Cox. That set up Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett to combine for a half sack late in the ball game. But I just look at this defense right now, and we can talk about how physical they are up front all day. But we got to give a couple helmet stickers out to that secondary. You think about losing Ronald Darby week 1. You didn't expect to have Sidney Jones. Maybe he's back at some point this year, but Jalen Mills gets an interception last night. Rasul Douglas gets an interception last night. Patrick Robinson gets an interception. And he's played beyond any expectation since he's been thrust into a starting role. And that's where I think this defense really has a chance to make some bones, is that this secondary is exceeding expectations. They're playing well. And last night, those 3 turnovers, in a way that we've watched the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots win Super Bowls over the last several years, Eagles offense converted those 3 turnovers into 17 points. That's how you win. That's how you make runs.
Give me a little bit more on Robinson, because I asked Doug about him earlier in the week, and when they brought him in here, he was terrible in the summer. Some people were speculating that he wouldn't even make the team. They thought he was just a depth piece, another guy that you bring on in. The way he's played, it's just like, my oh my, I can't even believe it with how bad he looked in the summer.
Yeah, Zach, forget what people were saying or what Doug was saying. I remember having conversations at Patrick Robinson's locker after practices where he'd give up 2 or 3 X-plays to the offense, where he'd get burned down the sidelines, and he would sit there hanging his head and saying that he needs to get better and that his confidence was shaken and that he was a rattled player. He didn't know whether he was going to make the team. And it's really interesting that Ronald Darby's injury almost has turned into a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because it forced Robinson to move into the inside in the slot, and he's really dominated that role. You've elevated Rasul Douglas into meaningful snaps as a rookie far earlier than this coaching staff was comfortable playing him. So, 2-3 years down the line, next season even, these snaps, these games that Rasul Douglas is playing in are going to have a big impact on his growth and development. But Robinson has really held down that starting job. He's played well. And last night he was at the right place at the right time and made a heck of a catch on that interception off a deflected pass. So I'm going to be really intrigued and really interested, Zach, in how this secondary shapes up in, say, weeks 9, 10, or 11, when Darby's back and healthy, when maybe Sidney Jones is in the mix. Who's the odd man out? You would think it's Patrick Robinson, but he's played well enough that I think you got to ride with him.
What's the latest on Sidney Jones and then also Ronald Darby?
Yeah, first on Sidney Jones, I saw last week prior to that Arizona Cardinal game during pregame warmups, Sidney Jones was sprinting back and forth in the end zone and doing a little bit more in terms of physical activity than we've seen him ever since he was drafted. And there's a chance you might see him for that Week 11 game against the Dallas Cowboys coming off the bye week. I don't know that he's going to start right away. I don't know that he's going to start this year, but if he's healthy enough to go, and I think you almost have to put him out there and get him some snaps, rotate him in. You use a second-round pick on the kid. He might be the most talented cornerback in that room. I had him as the number 2 cornerback in the draft class last year. So I think that there's a chance you might see him. And as far as Ronald Darby goes, he's not walking with any noticeable limp. He's off of the wheel of arms that he had been using at the NovaCare complex ever since the injury. So I think if you're looking at a realistic target date for Darby and a potential target date for Sidney Jones, I think you got to look at that Dallas game, and that would be quite a scene in Arlington at Jerry World on national TV to get maybe one or even both of those guys into a secondary that has performed above its head and exceeded expectations, but to throw in the 2 most talented players in that room, that could be a real boost for this secondary.
Matt Lombardo from NJ.com. I may have a story suggestion for you, if that's okay.
Always open to story tips and ideas. Hit me with it, son. Hit me.
How about you give a little love to Corey Unlin? Nice coach in the secondary right now. I think it'd be a nice little feature piece in the job he's done with this group.
I like it, and I think it's a stretch to think that Jim Schwartz would go back to being a head coach, but I think that he has a little bit of an itchy trigger finger to, make that happen. If Jim Schwartz winds up getting a head coaching job next year, you got to believe Corey Unlin is next in line, right? You got to believe that the way that the players respond to him, the way that Jalen Mills has said that he's made an incredible impact on the fundamentals of the game that he's picked up over the last 2 years since being drafted in the 7th round. You got to believe that he has coordinator written all over him. So I think that that could be something we see either here or elsewhere pretty quickly down the line.
Let's get to the quarterback at Carson Wentz. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, had the fumble early in the game. A lot of that just was because Big V was totally just manhandled by Julius Peppers, who definitely is going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. But Wentz hits Aguilar again last night for a touchdown. Ertz gets 2 touchdowns. Alshon makes a big catch. Matt Collins converts a big 3rd down. Just how about what you're seeing right now out of Carson Wentz, that he's being an MVP candidate 6 games into year number 2?
Yeah, Zach, every week, every Wednesday, I publish our quarterback power rankings across the NFL. Last week, I had Carson Wentz at number 7, and between you and I and the thousands of people listening to this interview right now, Carson Wentz is moving up the ladder. And I couldn't be more impressed by what we've seen from Carson Wentz, and every week he's improving. Every week it seems there's a new box that he's checking off. Struggle on the road last year. Eagles now have 3 road wins under their belt. Last year, 1-7 in games decided by 7 points or fewer. This year, they're 3-1 in those situations. They've blown teams out. They've won close games. They've won on the road, and they're gaining confidence. And I look at Carson Wentz, and you just talk about his poise in the pocket under pressure in fourth quarters. You talk about last night maximizing opportunities on the turnovers, turning those 3 turnovers into 17 points. You look at the development of Nelson Aguilar. You look at Zach Ertz as the leading receiver as a tight end in football right now across the NFL. That's all tied to Carson Wentz's development. This team's confidence is tied to Carson Wentz's confidence. As the quarterback goes, this team is following. And I think, Zach, that you could still hope to see him get a little more accurate and consistent with the deep ball, particularly with Alshon Jeffrey. That's a wrinkle that we haven't really seen come to fruition with this offense. But you look at last night, no Lane Johnson. They were 2-8 without him last year. His passer rating was 25 points lower when Johnson was out during the suspension than when Johnson was playing in the game. Passer rating last night of 110.7. 3 touchdowns, no picks, sacked 3 times, not sacked once in the second half. That's impressive. It was a gutty performance, and I think that that's kind of what you're going to continue to see from Wentz as he continues to develop.
I would assume Lane Johnson returns up against the Redskins, right?
I would think so. I've talked to some people around Lane right after the injury. They didn't think it was going to be a severe concussion or one that would require him to be in the protocol any longer than the minimum. This is a nice little break the Eagles have, and it's a luxury for Jonathan in terms of his recovery. They have 11 days off. They don't play again until next Monday against the Redskins. So I'd be pretty surprised if Lane isn't in there. And assuming that he's back, I think this offense has a chance to put up some really big numbers against Washington.
Now, we know that this has been a balanced team the last few weeks, and Doug has done a nice job adjusting to that. With the way, though, that they're giving out the carries to the specific backs, do you think it's time for LeGarrette Blount, maybe to get more of those carries moving forward?
Yeah, I think you can build a case for that, Zach. I do, but the counter-argument to that is he's been so effective as a bulldozer, bowling ball, breaking tackles type of a running back, a real between-the-tackles bruiser, if you will. At age 30, you really want to wear him down in week 7 or 8, or do you want to preserve him so come late in the season you can kind of not have the same dip in production that we saw last year when he was a member of the New England Patriots, and his numbers kind of did a nosedive in December and January in the postseason. So I think as long as this is working, and as long as you're getting meaningful carries out of some of the other backs on the roster, even though last night Corey Clement, wasn't a huge factor in the offense, and Wendell Smallwood hasn't been healthy with the injury. As long as those other guys are producing, I don't see any rush to give Blunt more carries at this point, because what you're doing is working. You have balance, and I would not want to see LeGarrette Blount get worn down to the point where you struggle to run the ball when you need to run it the most in cold weather against playoff caliber defenses.
Yeah, I'm thinking around November, like middle of November. That's when you start to see that shift a little bit and he gets more of the carries. That's what I've been saying for most of the season so far.
That's when the weather gets cold. That's when you play the Cowboys twice. That's when you play at Seattle. That's when you go to L.A. and play a Rams team that might be the Seahawks' biggest challenge in the NFC West. That's when Oakland comes here on Christmas night. So I could see it. I think that you kind of, go with what's working now. You don't alter your approach all too much for the next month or so, other than maybe, depending what happens with Denver in terms of their physical defense, how you want to attack them. But I'm with you. If you feel like, he has enough left in the tank, and if you feel like the other running backs aren't carrying their weight, then I would give one a more significant portion of the carries. But I think that whoever's running the football, Zach, they got a big boost last night when Stefan Wisniewski took every snap at left guard. He finally, Doug did, appeared to end that rotation, that charade with Chance Warmack and Isaac Seumalo. They gave the job to Wisniewski, who's been the best of the bunch, and I think the offense played at a high level because of it.
What did you make last night of Doug going for 2? I know it worked, but I wasn't a big fan of it. But I'm not going to kill him for it because of the job that he did with that team last night.
It's aggressive on the road. I mean, again, I'm with you. I'm not going to kill him on it. I think that if we start talking about decisions to go for 2 points in that situation, then we're looking for reasons to criticize the head coach. And I think that's a good problem to have if you're an Eagles fan, because outside of maybe that decision, I don't know about you, Zach. I can't really point to any other aspect of that game last night or any aspect of Doug Peterson's game plan and say, that just wasn't quite up to snuff.
You're right. What has changed with him? Because, it wasn't that long ago. It was 4th and 8, and everyone was bashing him, including myself. Just what has changed with Doug, even from, the early parts of this year and going back to last year? Has anything big time just changed, or is this team, just responding to their coach, making adjustments, and just kicking ass right now?
Well, I think part of it is, Zach, you look at what everybody expected Chip Kelly to be. Everybody expected Chip Kelly to be this innovator who would constantly be, rehoning his approach to football, and in the grand scheme of things, reshaping the way that football was played and the way it's coached. And I'm not going to say that Doug is any sort of great visionary or any sort of innovator in terms of wanting to change the game, but he's been malleable as a play caller. When the run-to-pass ratio was out of whack, you saw a pretty rapid return to balance. When the offensive line was taking its lumps with Isaac Seumalo, they didn't just stick with Isaac Seumalo because he was a third-round pick. They didn't stick with him because he wanted to stick with his guy. They made a change. When the running back rotation wasn't working and Darren Sproles ended up getting hurt, that's when they featured LeGarrette Blount. They've developed Carson Wentz, and I just think that Doug has kind of separated himself from Andy Reid, who was so set in his ways, and Chip Kelly towards the end was like this as well, that regardless of what opponents were doing, regardless of whether or not their system or their methodology of coaching football was working, they stuck it out and they tried to will it to work that way. Doug's evolving. Doug's adapting. And I think that not many people probably saw that coming out of Doug Peterson, but you have to be encouraged because it seems like the Eagles players are responding to this, and Doug doesn't seem like he's going to become stagnant in approach or in philosophy, and that's kind of exciting to watch unfold.
Still a lot of work to do, but 6 weeks in, is he the coach of the year in the National Football League?
I think he's up there. I think you have to look at Sean McVay and the job that he's done developing Jared Goff with the Rams. Looking around the NFL, I don't know that I can think of 4 other Coach of the Year candidates. Could you?
Probably not 4, but Andy Reid's going to be up there. But Doug's definitely in the conversation, no question about it.
Absolutely. Andy Reid's a great one. And there's an example of Andy has completely remade that offense and remade that system around the weapons that he has and the speed with Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt and molding that offense around Alex Smith. So I could absolutely see, particularly if the Chiefs continue to maintain their dominance as the number 1 seed in the AFC, I could certainly see Andy Reid getting some serious Coach of the Year consideration. But Doug is right in that conversation. Yeah, absolutely is. Not just because of the Eagles, sitting at 5-1 and atop the NFC if the season ended today, but the transformation of Carson Wentz from Week 17 a year ago to Week 6 this season, it's been remarkable. And it's really intriguing to think about how good he can become, because there are still issues, and they become smaller every week, but there are still areas where he can get better. And if Doug continues to maximize Wentz and this defense continues to play at a dominant level, they held the Panthers to 2.3 yards per play in the first half last night. You keep doing those sort of things, you're going to win a lot of football games. You're going to beat a lot of quality football teams. You're going to be in the mix for a high playoff seed and maybe more than that. And that, at the end of the day, that's what the voters are going to be looking at in terms of Coach of the Year type of consideration. And Doug has done everything to put himself right in that conversation.
Who would have thought? Hey, final thing before we let Matt Lombardo from NJ.com run and probably get some sleep. Jordan Hicks, update on Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, Doug said today that he doesn't anticipate that being anything serious or anything severe. So we'll see on Jordan Hicks. But that's another thing, Zach, we talk about Lane Johnson and the added time, an ankle injury, as long as it's not a fracture or anything that requires surgery, to be able to have the luxury in the middle of October, sitting at 5-1, to essentially not have to go back to practice until, I would think, Thursday, a full practice load next Thursday. That's going to do wonders for Jordan Hicks and his ability to rest up and get healthy for the Washington game.
How about the locker room last night? We got to see some videos of Malcolm Jenkins dancing, Jalen Mills dancing, as they should be celebrating. Obviously players going to be happy last night, but give me some of the feel in the locker room last night after the game.
Yeah, they were pretty fired up. They were loose, but I'll kind of take you inside a couple conversations. I spoke at great length with Chris Long and with Malcolm Jenkins. And both of those guys, Chris Long won a Super Bowl with the Patriots last year. Malcolm Jenkins was on some pretty successful teams with New Orleans Saints. They both said that they're kind of hesitant to think that this is a special team that's developing in front of them, but the focus is now on sustaining this run, sustaining this high level of success, not getting complacent. And Chris Long basically told me that these games, winning these games, going 5-1 to start the year, going 4-0 in division play, that those are games that come playoff time, come November, come December. You're going to look back on these victories, and they're going to be insurance policies because you now have a head-to-head in terms of tiebreaker with the Carolina Panthers. You're 2-0 in the division. You look at Ezekiel Elliott getting suspended. You look at what's going on with the Giants right now. You're in the driver's seat in the division, the driver's seat in the conference. Now it's, to borrow the Panthers' slogan, now it's all about keeping pounding. It's all about keeping going. And we're going to, as they keep winning, confidence begets confidence, success begets more success. I think that that's exactly the track that this Eagles team is on. And there are a lot of veterans in that room who's done some special things in this league that can kind of maximize this and make sure that everybody keeps their head on straight. I don't think this is a fluke. I think this is just the start of something that could become a really fun and really special year for this group.
How about that? Matt Lombardo of NJ.com. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, my friend.
Talk to you next week, brother.